Hello and welcome to the one and only SNR, the SNR. Yes, because ladies and gentlemen, it is Saturday. And what does Saturday imply? Well, Saturday obviously implies a Saturday news recap. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is YouTube's absolutely #1 hit favorite show here on my little corner of the internet. Is what we're doing. I'm going to review some of the more interesting news pieces that I have found over the last 7 days since the last Saturday news recap. Some of them might be really interesting, some of them seem to be semi-interesting, right? And sometimes it's not just only the article and the news piece itself, but actually the discussion provoked or created by the idea of taking up that particular news piece that we're gonna go through if you're new to it. So, right here, right now, today, we're T-less, but not clueless. Yeah? Worked a bit on that, a bit too much. And it's about 5:15 in the afternoon. I know, not 1:10 for once. Even though we've actually been semi-stable in recording at that time for a very long time. So I'm kind of happy with that. But without any further ado, mates, let's get straight into the action. Now, there will be 3 international news pieces and 1 a bit more localized to the channel within itself. Now, the first one is something that is very close to heart in my case, especially in my case, I would argue. Not because of anxiety issues that we're probably gonna get into and talk about, but because of gaming. Yes, because the first one is about video games and mental health. Yeah, and I'm not saying that mental health is the point where I'm feeling close to heart, even though could be, but video games in particular. And the title is Nobody's Properly Talking. And yeah, that's probably it. Nobody is probably talking about mental health issues and video games. And the point in the case that they are trying to make in the article is that video games has been along for a very long time. It's been around is what I'm trying to say. It's been around for a very long time now. And ever since the days of the arcade, older people I'd say, have argued for that video games they're bad for mental illness, isn't they? They lower the interpersonal skills people have. They make people less social. They destroy the social lives of the youth. They're corrupting and destroying them and undermining their thoughts. And obviously, if we look a bit further into the 2000s, we can see that games like Grand Theft Auto and World of Warcraft have been further tried to be used to elevate these points as points of people are getting aggressive if they play video games. People are getting obsessed and addicted to video games. And and I would like to say as well, which they raise as well. The point is that video game addiction is a fully recognized illness nowadays, a fully recognized addiction. But we will get into that in a while. And all of these different things, that it breeds violence, it breeds being unsocial, it breeds stand outside of society. That is what gaming is. However, we do rarely talk about the entire full picture, don't we? And I've been talking about it before, this idea that the mentality, even the media's mentality and perception of video games is changing. And I would argue that we're in a flux right now, where video game will be entering the next matter of contempt, where people will try and argue for these points again, which is VR, virtual reality. But we're also in a point where video games are making a considerable amount of money. They've always done, probably, right? But now we're talking movie stars are getting involved with games. So the media's perception is starting to be into it and being like, game is pretty good. And then articles like these come around where they try to target this other side of the discussion, where they're trying to say, well, maybe, and I'm just saying maybe, right? Crazy thought. Video games aren't all bad. Maybe video games are actually helping you with your interpersonal skills if you are someone who wouldn't excel in a social environment physically, but whilst online, you're a very social person. They also raise the idea that addiction can come to anyone, right? It doesn't really matter what you're addicted to. I mean, it does to a certain extent, right? Could be a heritage and stuff like that, but generally, when it comes to addiction, anyone can get addicted by anything, right? If you just expose yourself to it in an unnatural and over-exhausting way for a long enough time so that it actually becomes an unnaturally part of your life and that you can't really let go of it, then you can become addicted to anything. I can be addicted to milk if I so do choose to and if I really try. So this idea that video game addiction is something worse than an alcoholic addiction or a smoking addiction, it's just ludicrous now, isn't it? And I would argue rather that you have a video game addiction than that you have a smoking addiction, right? I mean, it's less of a hassle for society if you do. I would argue. Obviously, in the short run and in the long run, I would argue that that is the case, but I don't have the figures on it. But something else that they also take up is this the aggressivity, I don't even know how to say that, but the amount of how aggressive you get if you play video games, that in some form or fashion, that in some shape, would increase how aggressive you are if you play video games. And I would just like to point out, which they also semi-point out, if you read between the lines in the article, they talk about the idea that if you're not just a mental nutcase, right, you can make the difference. You can yourself. You're a brilliant person. Yet again, I'm gonna take this up again. You're a highly evolved mammal, a highly evolved human being. You can probably distinguish between playing a video game on your TV or in your virtual reality headset, right, or on your console, whatever, and perhaps unaliving someone in a game, taking someone out in a game, hitting someone in a game. And then make a distinct difference between that action and smashing someone's head in on the street. I would argue even a 3-year-old can make that distinction, yeah? Which they also take up in the article, and maybe, just maybe, and I'm not saying that, I know it's kind of ludicrous, isn't it, to argue that everybody in society would be, bright enough to understand that there's a difference between a video game and the real world. Most people do. I know it's crazy to some of you out there to hear this point of view, but yeah, it actually is true that most people do not have that big of a deal when it comes to distinguish between reality and a game. So can we really say that aggression is made by playing video games? To some extent, maybe, but mostly, if you're a mental nutcase that's gonna hit people and be fairly aggressive, you're probably gonna be that anyway. Nevertheless, if you play video games or not. So, to further this point, and not that specific point, but to further the entire idea that was taken up in this newspaper, was that in order to get a fuller understanding and a better understanding of gaming, and I really love this type of going about the problem, is this type of solution, is discussing it more. I absolutely adore that way of going about the problem. Now, you might be saying, but you're not saying the same in politics. No, that's because, in politics it's about actually making a change as well. Not just saying that you're gonna make a change, not really arguing with anyone, argue with anyone about everything and everyone, but not really coming to a conclusion. Whilst here, it's more about building a perception. And when it comes to building a perception, it's good to talk about all the perspectives that are out there, because then you will get the better perspective and you will be able to intertwine your perspective with other ones on the same subject, on this same topic, intellectual diversity on a topic. So in order to get a better perception of video games, we need to further discuss it. And I love and adore that way of going about it, right? Because mostly when I read articles that says, video games are making you horrendously bad, let's stop playing them and let's put them off and let's be done with it. But here they're saying, there's actually good things about video games that I would argue that most people would support. And if you do not believe me, let's talk about it instead of saying, let's play games. No, let's talk about it to see if we're getting it wrong, or if you're getting it wrong, or if the truth is somewhere in between, which is often are. So I love that way of going about solving the issue, solving the problem. Let's talk and discuss about it. Anyway, mates, that's probably about as much as we're gonna get into that. But I absolutely adore the way that they went about it, and I love to see in the media that there is a point of view that's actually taking up the positive impact of playing video games as well, and kind of defending the general consensus, let's say, that most people tend to think that video games are bad because the media writes about them in a bad way. But now the media is starting to turn, and it's something that we've seen over the last 6 months happening, and I love that. So let's move into the second news piece, and I would hate to sound like a broken record, but I will anyway. Because now we're gonna talk about how the US is waging its trade war with China. Yay! 3 for 3, am I right? Something like that. Third week in a bloody row. But now it is actually worse. Everybody who has followed this series for a while probably know that I'm an advocate of the free market. Yet again, to establish some context for the third time in a row, I'm a 22-year-old, right? World announced, I know everything in the world, how it works, how it changes, why it changes, and so on and so forth. There's probably not much I need to learn in this life further than what I already know. To add to that, I'm a freshly graduated student. So basically, I have a fair understanding of everything and probably an equally correct understanding of everything. Now, obviously, I don't. Even though I might be an arrogant prick at times, I'm not arrogant enough to argue that that is the case. So take this with a grain of salt. But I'm an advocate of the open and free market. The freer the market, the better the consumer is off. Obviously with some restraints on monopolies. But in general, I would argue that the freer the market is, the better the consumer is off. And then it's just a matter of where jobs are going to be localized, and if nationalities in this open and globalized market and world will actually work. That, you know, boundaries and borders probably don't make much sense when you have such a globalized economy. Anyway, that's just my point of view on the entire topic. So, over the last couple of, I would say, months, the US has kind of, or rather a few years, ever since the new election in the US, and probably even before that, the US has been threatening China and Russia with tariffs on their Chinese import. And now they've actually gone through and done it. Which is a problem, because if they do it, China can do the same thing to the US, which means that it will just be a more inefficient market. Why am I saying this? Well, because probably most things are gonna go the same way anyway. The US is gonna use the money that they gain from the tariffs that they put, you know, the extra taxes that they put on the Chinese import. When people import things from China anyway, they're gonna take that money and shove it into their own export, which is gonna export more cheaply because they're getting the support from the government, over to China again. And then China is gonna use the amount of money that they get from US import and put that into their export, so that they kind of offset the American import tax of Chinese goods. So all in all, it's gonna go around, theoretically. Probably won't, because these, you know, these monies, so to say, the money that's going to be sort of recycled and tried is probably going to be cut off due to corruption, and people are going to get paid to do this, and then something is going to go wrong, and some money is going to go to other places, and that's going to be effective enough. So in the long run, less money is going to go back, and then the trade will just, you know, stop off and stagnate over time. But it will inevitably probably decrease due to this reason. I'm not a big fan of this. I would say every country should be specializing in what they want and what they can, and then we will work our way out from there. Now, the main problem though that I saw this week that I haven't been seeing other weeks was that one of the main reasons for why the US is trying to do this is because in China they don't have, what should we say, a strict of a trade law and copyright laws we do in the westernized world, so to say. And this is true for most of Eastern Asia. We're talking South Korea and Japan as well, where they don't have as well. In Japan they have now, but previously they haven't. You know, go back 30 years, but they don't have as firmly of a copyright law as we do in the westernized world. I will leave a link in the description to a video that discusses that fairly way in a video game sense, though, in a suing between PUBG and Fortnite, but still, it's a video worth watching if you want to have a short overhaul of that process and of that mindset. But so a reason for why the US is putting up an import tariff against China is because, well, a lot of copyrights are not taken into consideration. That means that China can just copy all the things that the US are doing and then just reassemble them, mass produce them, send them back to the US for a cheaper price, because they don't have to cover the R&D cost, the research and development cost, for coming up with this solution to begin with. And that's also one of the reasons for what this is done, why this is happening, which I can fully support, because I do believe that copyright law is something that needs to be upheld in order for the open and free market to actually work. So maybe this is a movement towards the free market in the long run. However, I don't see it right now, and there probably is a better way of going about this than threatening different countries with different tariffs and different, taxes, which will inevitably hurt the consumer in the short run, and perhaps also the long run if the problems isn't getting fixed and tariffs and taxes are just keep getting raised and raised and raised. And arguably, if tariffs and taxes are getting raised and raised and raised on import and export, it will be a less globalized economy. A less globalized economy means that all the countries aren't as intertwined as they are right now, which means that a country can probably be more self-sustained, and if a country can be more self-sustained, then why does it need other countries? And if it doesn't need other countries, but it do need more places to grow their own, production, because they can't really domestically keep that in the way that they do, because it isn't as efficient enough as import and export. That means that they need to expand living room, and so to say, and then it becomes war. I know, I'm obviously looking at the world from the lens of a fresh graduated student from economics, and that's why I'm looking at war from the perspective of economics, but it does make some sense. So this is probably a very far-fetched idea, but yeah, I'd say free market is where, as far as we can do. Anyway, let's move into the third piece of news. Sweden went out in the FIFA World Cup. Yep, we lost. Not that I thought that we were gonna make it to the finals, but still, guys, good job. We went out against England, who then later went out against Croatia. Yeah, Croatia. And now Croatia and France is meeting in the World Cup finals tomorrow. Woo! So go you guys. Good for making it all the way here. Now, something interesting that I would like to take up as well is the something that you don't really consider when you watch a football game, especially not for me, who is, a bad player in soccer, football, and a bad viewer of football, because I just seemingly lack the interest, really. Something that I find quite interesting, though, is that if you look at the football match, when it's 2-0, you probably think that, this game is pretty much over, because they have 2 points, they have no points. It's 45 minutes left. How, what are the odds that they're going to make two other scores? Now, something that I would like to consider, though, is that all of the players are playing with their feet. I know that's obvious. They're playing with a ball that's rolling around. That's hard to, work with as it is. And it's a pretty big goal. So that's a testament to how good the players are, that people are thinking like, 2-0 is probably done, because the players are just so good that more goals are probably not going to happen. Because if there were no enemy teams, let's say, no opposing team, there would be goals pretty quickly, pretty rapidly, pretty often. More than once every 30 seconds. So it's kind of interesting to see that just by putting in 11 other players on the other side, the game drags out to 90 minutes with sometimes no goals being scored. And that's a testament to how good both of the teams are. Now, there obviously are occasions where this doesn't hold, like Germany versus Brazil 4 years ago in the last World Cup, 8-1 or something like that. But in the gist of it is. Now let me move on to the last point of news that is just around this channel. Gonna take it quickly. Got retweeted of one of the artists of the covers I made. Hashtag recognition, am I right? By Rixton. And that was awesome, because that's some form of recognition that what I've done has actually been retweeted. Not that they're not retweeting frequently, they do retweet frequently from fans and so on and so forth, but still, it was something amazing for me and something fun for me to see. Yeah, that was it, mates. So that was it for this Saturday news recap. I'll see you next Saturday. No, just kidding. I'm actually seeing you tomorrow with a bit of a song, probably. I said a few days ago that this is a song that's gonna try out my range as a singer, and sadly enough, spoilers alert, I have no range. But you're gonna see that tomorrow. Have a nice one, mates. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.